Joining me in this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast, I am very pleased to welcome Naomi-Rose, who is an expert LinkedIn profile writer and strategy coach. Naomi-Rose knows a thing or two about LinkedIn, which is going to be our hot topic here today, because I know a lot of you are tussling with how to get best value and hopefully even sales from LinkedIn. So welcome to the episode, Naomi-Rose.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So where to begin? I mean, everybody has a LinkedIn profile. Everybody knows it's important, but nobody's really scoring. Why is this?
Yeah, it's so tricky because, you think someone's being really successful because they've got 15,000 followers. So you must copy the template of their profile because clearly it's working. But actually, that's not the way to go about it. It's really working out the psychology of how people buy and how your audience will engage with you. And when you reverse engineer it that way, then you can actually figure out how to write your profile. And I've come across some lately that are written as sales pages, like one line paragraphs, 4 words per line. And it's assuming that I want to buy their products. It's assuming I have that problem. And it's assuming, all these things. And I just find myself doing what I normally do, which is a scan read. And the other day I was looking quite closely at one because I actually needed to speak to that person for another purpose and I needed to do my research. And it was so funny. I found myself reading it backwards because you get that's the last thing you want to do when it comes to like creating a profile. So yeah, how do you go about it? Would you like me to tell you the answer?
Yeah, I mean, almost sort of from top down, really. I mean, unless there is a single magic wand that you can wave, and suddenly the profile just goes from being an also ran to being an absolute winner. But really, from top down, I mean, I always tend to sort of start when I'm looking, I guess, at the sort of how valuable is my own profile. I kind of start with the cover image because I always think that's a kind of almost like an entry doorway, isn't it, into the profile?
Yeah, you're totally right about a top down, actually, because that's how we come into it. So just to give you a bit of background of how I became someone doing LinkedIn profiles, I'd had my own business before doing life coaching. It'd gone belly up. I'd written a book about it called Grassroots to Green Shoots, which is available on Amazon, and I was trying to find my way forward. And I got approached by some friends who had a company selling LinkedIn training, and they asked if I'd go and work for them and do sales. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. It was an up and coming thing. It's something everyone was talking about. And so I knew that that was a thing to go into. When I got to the company, I realized that we needed a hook, a way of actually getting people to want to talk to us. So we could set up a talk and go and do a talk to 20 people at a breakfast meeting or what have you. But what was it that was actually going to have them talk to us afterwards and actually engage us to sell them a training course? And just phoning up and saying, hey, do you want a training course? Didn't really seem to hit the mark. And I recognized very quickly that actually people cared about what they looked like on LinkedIn. And so I started offering them a LinkedIn profile review. And that was 11 years ago now. And in that 2 years, I noticed myself how I was reacting and not reacting to certain profiles when I felt rapport with the person, when I didn't feel rapport. For example, when I was speaking to a guy in Australia doing his LinkedIn profile review, and I thought he was just the intern. And then it turned out that he was actually the CEO and his profile was 5 years out of date, and how I shifted in my respect and how I communicated shifted. And how one person I just really just didn't feel like I was building a relationship with, and it was very struggle to like really feel that tangibleness about her. And whilst I was talking to her, I was scrolling through her website when I came across a photo of her, and instantly I felt that connection. Whereas on her LinkedIn, she had this tiny, a full body picture. You couldn't see who she was. And so all of these things that I picked up over 2 years about when you look and when you don't look, and read and don't read, and all those kind of things. And that's what led me then to say to people, would you want me just to write your LinkedIn profile for you? Because I was reviewing it, they were loving it, they were buying the training course, they were then going and trying to implement the things that my colleagues were teaching them. But then I was like, well, hang on a second, this isn't really working, is it? Because you haven't got your brand sorted. You haven't actually sorted out the things I said to you on the profile. So it's all kind of like just another message, and you've got to work quite hard from sending that message. You've got to work quite hard to get that person interested in your services. Whereas the first thing they're going to do when they get an inbox message from you or see a piece of content is to click on your profile and see who are you. So that's how the profile company began, because I just started saying to people, let me just write it for you. Let me just take care of it. You've told me everything. Now let me take care of it. And it really is a top-down thing. So you're quite right about the image, because the image sets context straight away. Firstly, if it's got color in it, it's not the bog standard black and white grey box. It tells me you've taken care of this. You're an active person on LinkedIn. I'm going to see this straight away. It gives me your branding colors. So again, you created a brand to create a feel and an impression and leave people feeling a certain way. Or I hope you've taken the time to consider those things and work with a professional. And that's your first splash of color. And it also, someone's met you somewhere else, picked up your business card, seen you on a podcast or something like that, they'll know they're talking to the right person. And it can also really build that level of authority as well, depending on how well you've put it together. Okay, this is a person who is an influence, not an influencer, authority, credible at what they do. They're really driving with this. So it really sets the bar of whether you're driving a dirty car or a clean car. Do you know what I mean? And I often do compare it to the business suit, whether you're wearing just casual rubbish clothes or whether you're wearing that really nice cut suit, that sets you apart. So that background image can do a lot, and it can set the context of the conversation as well. The next thing you're going to do is see the photo. And I've kind of alluded to this already, that if I can't see you, I can't connect with you. And we need to connect on that human to human level. And you want your photo to be your professional photo, because that is being at a networking event. And I look across the room and I think that's a smart, put together, intelligent looking person that I'd like to meet. I'm going to cross the room and I'm going to speak to them. That is your profile. And that is them going really quickly. They don't have to cross the room. Really quickly, I'm going to keep reading. Then I come over to you and say, hey, what's your name? And you say, it's Neil. And I say, I'm Naomi-Rose. And you say, great, what do you do? So that's your name. And then you say, very quick top line, I'm a da-da-da-da-da. That's your headline. And so we want to get that headline to sum it up really quickly. This is what I do. And we want to do it as the problem that we solve. And we want to be really aware of those first 47 characters, because I can see your photo in the suggested people to connect with. I can see your photo, your photo and your 47 characters of your headline when we have the suggested on the side. I can also see that when you've commented on something on LinkedIn. And if I'm seeing a comment on LinkedIn that you've written that's really smart, I'll go, oh, who is this? And if the headline says, I work with people to identify, and that's 47 characters, I've got to click on your profile to find out. And I'm not going to. I'm a busy day. It wasn't that important to me. I'm just not going to click. But if I can see in those 47 characters, building billion-dollar organizations or something that really straight away is what you do, and it's connected to that comment, I'm going to go, oh, interesting comment. Let me come through. Let me come through to your profile. So those 47 characters are really important. And then obviously you do have more characters available to say a little bit more. And that can really set the context of the conversation that you're having. Now, creators mode has gone, so we don't need to worry about the hashtags. Well, it's still there, but the hashtags aren't there. So if you're looking for hashtags, they're not there. You can't put them on. But then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down, and your featured content's going to stand out. So really taking care of that featured content and saying something sensible. It could be just articles that you've published or a popular post. But if you're looking for leads, you're going to want calls to action that people can connect with and go, oh yeah, I'll have a bit of that. But they're not going to click at this point. So then they're going to open up your about section because they're that much more interested. They're going to click see more. And this is where we scan read, and we go from top to bottom, bottom to top, and we're looking for keywords. We're looking for how well it's put together. We're looking for, does this person care? Have they thought about it? And keywords at the end of sentences have to be related to what you do. So if you don't do SEO, and this happened once, someone put, I don't do search engine optimization with capital letters, right? So he comes on a call with me and I go, so you do search engine optimization? No, it says that I don't. I went, yeah, there's your first bit of feedback. can't see the word don't because it's 4 letters. These are very long words with a capitalization and they're at the end of a paragraph. Just don't do it, because that's where the eye is going to go to. What we're trying to do, so we've crossed the room. What's your name? What do you do? I'm like, no, Neil, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more. And that's what your about section should be. Written in the first person, written in a way that's engaging, written in a way that makes me like you and gets me feeling like we've had an exchange. So you don't want to ask any big jerky questions there, because if I were talking to you and you ask me a big question, I go, oh, now what's my answer? Might have gone and I'm trying to answer you the question. I'm not reading anymore. So you've really got to think about it in that way. Like, how is this a conversation and how am I getting to know this person better? And also understand that only about 2% of people that visit your profile or connect with you will actually become your client. But probably like another 20% would actually refer you if they got what you did, they understood it, they knew who your ideal client were, thought you were credible, and they could recommend you. That's really where a lot of business for me comes from. I don't know who these people are. When I say, oh, how did you come across me? I just found you in my diary, booked in for next week. How did you find me? And they say, oh, so-and-so recommended you. And I'm like, never heard of that person. And it's because they've seen something that I've written on, and they've come to my profile, they've remembered it, and they've gone, oh, you need to speak to. And that's how this person's gone, oh, let me look that up. And because I'm standing for a very specific problem in the world, I'm not being bland about what I'm doing. So those are the kind of top level things. And then you've got to think about, and it really is a top down, that's why this answer is quite long. You've got to think about your experience section. The entry for the experience of the role that is the current business you want attention for. In that, you really want to be defining what the company does. So you've had a good chat in the about section, you've got their curiosity, and now they need to nail it down. Do you actually do what I think you said you do? And would you be interested in hearing from me? And what would working with you look like? And inside of there, we literally, the first line needs to be, this company does this, and we work with this type of person. Good, right, I've understood them in the right place. And what's really good there is when you start then writing about how you work with people and give people an idea what working with you would look like. So it's a kind of overview of those packages. The big package, like, wow, you do this big transformational piece for me, amazing. Oh, but that's too much. That's a step too far. I don't know you yet. And then you'd have that product for prospects, that kind of, I could see myself doing that. That's an easier first yes. I could see myself stepping into that. But, I don't know you yet, do I? I'm still not going to come pay $5,000 for consultation. And that's where you'd have your free bit, your call to action to have a diagnostic, a chat with you, that, and it's something tangible. And there's so much I could say in all of that. But all of that is in my book. So there you go. I can read that. And then what you're looking at then is your past experience and making sure that's tidy and it's up to date and it's balanced, that you put enough, the similar amount of information in each one. And you're looking to tell a story of how you got into this job, into this business that you've started, and the problem that you're trying to solve, and how you saw that problem evolve, and why you now believe what you believe. And the only people that are ever going to read your experience entries are the people that have either just bought from you and are going through buyer's remorse. Who is this person? Why did I say yes? You're so convincing. The person that is on the pinnacle of making the decision, and they're just not quite sure yet. They might be comparing you with different suppliers. And then also the hidden decision makers, those who are making the decision on which supplier for you. And also those who advise and go, why did you spend that amount of money with this person? Why are you talking to this person? They will come along, and you haven't spoken to them, but they have the ear of your buyer. And this is where you can turn them around and convince them to work with you. That this, actually, I really think you've made a good decision here. This Neil is brilliant. He's going to really help you. So there's a lot going on, and it's all in the profile.
Wow. It's so exciting, because I think the way that you're kind of defining this is It is so real world, isn't it? I think a lot of people think of, LinkedIn profile. So it's a digital footprint. It's got to be, very kind of either academic or very sensible, and it's got to have all of my certificates and kind of almost like a legal semi-contract here. But the way you're advocating it, Naomi-Rose, is that it's kind of like mimicking a real world networking situation. So there's a real kind of human to human thing going on here. Is it?
Absolutely.
A lot of people have kind of missed the point with it.
Yeah, I think they have. I do find that a lot. Just because I think it's when imposter syndrome triggers a little bit. Like, I've got to be seen to be this, and I've got to prove myself to be that. And that can be sometimes why people go for the third person. Like, there are a few times when I agree with the writing in the third person. And that is if you are very well known, you have a product to offer, but you don't speak to clients directly. Like, Anthony Robbins does talk to you directly because he does videos and he'll pop up and tell you some piece of wisdom and come on my next course, So he is relating. So that would be a first person. There was one time I saw somebody and he gives very key advice in buying and selling businesses. And he pretty much doesn't want to get involved. Come on my course, do my course, and then talk amongst your accountability group and other people and figure it all out. I mean, I don't know him personally to say that, but I have never felt that kind of warmth to be able to approach that. You go, oh, can you just help me with this? And what do you think of that? He's busy doing his own business things. He's just being kind, selling you his knowledge, And that kind of person, you want to keep a barrier up. Like, yeah, just don't come too close. And then a third person can work. But generally, it puts a barrier up when you speak in the third person. The other thing to recognize as well is that we do not work in HR and we do not speak the language of CVs and resumes. Like, why do I want to relate to you as a CV? I don't. Like, I'm not hiring you. I'm not looking for keywords to see if I want to interview you. And you're a person at the end of the day, and that's who I want to meet. And people who really stand out well are those that stand for a problem that they solve in the world. So what we have to be really clear of is that nobody came onto LinkedIn today to meet me. Even if they met me at a LinkedIn event this morning and thought, I'm going to come online and I'm going to connect with Naomi, that's probably the only time someone's ever gone, I'm going to go to LinkedIn and find this person. So every time you're meeting somebody new, you are a distraction to their day. They are asking the question, how is this relevant to me? And is this a good use of my time? And if they come to your profile and it's poorly put together, it's got a lot of the standard grey boxes because you haven't customized it. The paragraphs are all over the place. People are going to leave, right? And they're not going to remember you, and they're definitely not going to connect with you. Well, they might do if they're trying to add numbers to their account, but there's no relationship there, and they're definitely not getting closer to either buying from you or recommending you. And recommending you is to see you as a thought leader, someone who solves an important problem in the world. So, what we have to do is be memorable. And if it's not important to me, if it's not relevant to me, and it's not of interest to me, which you're not, you as you today are not, we can't talk to every single person we pass on the street. It would be impossible. But we give our telephone numbers away and say, oh, we'll meet you for coffee to people who are like, oh, that's really interesting. I'd like to spend some more time with this person. And that's the response that we need. So we need to capture their attention. We need to lead with the problem that we solve, because when we lead with the problem that we solve, someone goes, oh, hang on a minute. That's interesting. What's this about? The best thing you can do as well is speak to the symptoms of the problem, because most people who are your ideal client don't know they have a problem and aren't looking for a solution. And those who are your ideal client and are looking for a solution, they know all the keywords. They know how to Google you, so SEO is important. They're ready with their budget. They know how to play you off of one supplier off another to get the price down. They're nice to have because they're eager and ready to go, but they're coming in with just an investment ready to go. You haven't had a chance to really build a relationship up. They're seeing you as a commodity. And that's actually the red ocean strategy that you'll hear people talking about. But when you talk to people who don't know they have a problem and aren't aware of a solution, and you awaken them to the fact that they're living with is not the status quo. It can be better. They can improve it. They'll go, excuse me, what? And they'll wake up and you'll be the only person they're looking to. And that's why people become thought leaders and influencers, because you're the one that awoke me to this in the first place. I want to know more. I want you to explain this to me more. So if someone can identify with, it awakens them and they identify with what you're saying, go, gosh, that's me. They'll then go through a process of diagnosing their problem and going, yeah, I had that problem. That's exactly it. And then a lot of people then will go, do you know what? I'm going to go and buy a book. I'm going to buy a book on this. I'm going to listen to a podcast on it. I'm going to go to YouTube and I'll try and fix it myself. And some people, they can get solutions doing that because their problem just wasn't that big, and they can solve it themselves. And they're not your ideal client. But other people will look at it and say, I can't do this myself. And actually, I need to solve this problem because I'm in pain. I've been living with this for a long time. I didn't know that it was a problem. I just thought it's the way life was. Or I did know this was a problem. I hate it, but I didn't know there was a solution. I'm prepared to put budget into this. And who are they going to come and put budget into? The person that awoke them to this problem in the first place, which is then where profile comes into it, where they're like, do you, and it is a LinkedIn profile, but it's also everything that comes up when they Google you. You look credible. This is definitely the problem you solve. You definitely want to solve it for me. I can see myself working with you. I really want this to go ahead. Oh, look, and here's how I can book an appointment with you. So it's really easy for me to book in and have a diagnostic call where we can explore what's going on for me. Have I diagnosed my problem properly? Are you the right person for me? Do we have a chemistry that I can see myself working with you? And then for you as the expert is to then ask the buying question, say, do you want to work together? So all of this needs to be thought through, all of this. And it's all happening every single day, whether you like it or not. All of that is taking place on your LinkedIn profile.
I love the practicality with which you talk about this, because I think everybody listening to this will be thinking, okay, yeah, she knows how I've fallen into that trap, or yeah, I know I've been meaning to do that and I haven't yet got round to it. Certainly since we've lost creator mode, because creator mode to me was that little switch that said, right, I'm committed to this. I'm going to now take with that little toggle on and off button, I'm now going to take my profile from an also ran up to something that's going to be pretty much supercharged. Without that now, and you've used the phrase thought leadership there, is it really important in your profile to have like a really consistent theme of topics? Do we need to really understand let's call it a content strategy that is really consistent, it's very thoughtful, it's kind of maybe thought-provoking at times, but it's around consistent topics so that when somebody reads the profile that you've just described there, they can also see that you're publishing content that will support it. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, because people have very short attention spans. And if you put out on April Fool's Day, I'm shutting down this business, people will believe you and they will not connect that today's the 1st of April. And that's happened. And I've gone to that person and gone, oh, you shut your business down. Like a year later. What? And then we worked out it was an April Fool's joke. Like, people have very short attention spans. And it is about being consistent with your message. I've also seen people be consistent with content, constantly putting it out about these wonderful things they get up to. And I'm all for listening and watching, going off to this exhibition, going off to that one, going off in the camper van, getting a divorce, like all these different things. I'm thoroughly enthralled, but I don't know what she does. I don't know why she's at that conference. And then I did work out what her industry was. And she did actually put it in the beginning of her profile, the headline, with a nice symbol. So I thought, well, there we go, that's good. But I don't know, and I doubt she'll ever listen to it to work it out. I'm talking about her, but I don't know if she stands in front of the camera, behind the camera, edits, directs. I have no idea. So in all of this time, I've never recommended her and her company to anybody because I have no idea what her speciality is within this. I have no idea who her ideal client is. I have no idea what problems that she solves for clients, like why they would want to work with her over somebody else, because video is a massive game of so many different types of type of video, type of client site, business size, problem the video solves, so many different things. And I swear, in 2 years of following her, I have no idea. And that's a waste of content. I often think about content posts like leaves blowing in the wind. They're here today, gone tomorrow, and there's a lot of them blowing past, especially today because it's really windy. But that is content, constantly content blowing past you on LinkedIn. Which ones are going to stop and make you go, I'm going to read that, and that's useful and relevant to me today? And which ones am I going to look at and go, Neil's posted again. I recognize the tone of voice, the pace, the brand. That's who Neil is. And it's reminding me that's who you are. So it's not like I met you 3 years ago and now I pretend like I've never met you, which I've done with people before. I've gone an entire weekend camping with somebody, got really irate with them, and a story that I tell people. And would you believe it? I met somebody, knew that I knew them, and it was 6 months into the relationship when I realized that that's who it was. The person I'd gone camping with. I'd completely forgotten. And we both just went, when we realized, like, oh my goodness, it's you. So if you can do that on a camping trip for 3 days, it was memorable and a horrible story you tell everybody. You can definitely do it. You met somebody in business and you forgot about them. That's how we forget people. But if your content is constantly coming up and reminding me, I'm not going to forget. Do you know what I mean? I'm always going to be like, that's Neil. That's his brand. He's the person I would recommend. If anybody said to me they have a problem with, he's the person I'm going to speak to. And again, the most powerful content is the content that speaks about the symptoms of the problem. Because when people are talking, they don't label their problem. They just tell me what the problem is, right? How they're experiencing it, the symptoms. And if I read a post and I go, gosh, that's how that happens for people. Gosh, I can get that. And then I meet someone and they're saying exactly that. Then I'm going to go, oh, you need to check out Neil's stuff.
So obviously we've been quite deep there in terms of individual profiles, and I don't necessarily, unless you really want to get into the whole business page thing, I'm happy to stick with personal profiles, because I think for most people, you've got to sort your own house in order, get your own house in order before you start doing your business page. But how if somebody's working, say, within a team, so they're part of maybe a team that is kind of in business development, or they might be in marketing, and they're having to maintain some level of consistency because it could be Naomi that you speak to, or it could be Neil that you speak to. Because we're operating as a team, we need to have that consistent face. How do a team like that, how do they go about kind of deciding where the priority is, or if there's a lead profile or something like that? Where do you begin with that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I do work with some corporates, and they come to me. I mean, I've had one for the last 7 years, just come back when new people get recruited. If you've got someone who's not client facing, then you really just want to have them put up, I work at this company, and say something, about the company and why they enjoy working at the company in the experience entry. Because for someone at that level, that's the only control you're going to have. The rest of it is really for them. And you want to say, if you're interested in this, go to wherever, somewhere else. Don't contact this person, and for that person, that brings that kind of consistency. And then that person, they're probably not on LinkedIn that much. They're not client facing. If they're looking for a job, they'll crack on looking for a job using it, But if you've got people in business development, you've got to remember that people buy from people, and people buy from people who love what they do and are experts in it. So if you've got like someone who's in a sausage factory almost of sales, of I don't care about you, I just want to ring the bell and get the sale. And you can feel that, that's just what's going on. And there's quite a lot of high turnover. LinkedIn, again, is probably not going to cut that person's profile, and who they are as a person is probably not going to come into the mix. I'm probably going to know that Joe sold it to me, but who's Joe anyway? Like, I don't know his surname. I'm just whatever. So there is a level of complexity of sale where I would get to know you, and I would know your full name, and I would meet you, and we'd probably go through quite a few meetings and working out the specs of the project and negotiating. And it's at that point where I want expertise. I don't want just somebody in a sales job. I want someone who genuinely cares, who is bringing something to the table, who's really able to advise me. And that's where the profile does come into it, is very important. And you although there are set things that you would say about the company that's the same, maybe a different way of writing it, you would still go in with the problem that you solve. And I'm telling you, like, I've done 50 profiles for one company, and every single person who comes says to me something very different about why they love the company. And what was interesting is that I eventually got to the CEO for the UK branch, and he said something in his interview that I was like, oh my goodness, everybody else has been saying that. It was some value in how they approach work. And I thought, my goodness, that's where it comes from, you know. But they all, even though there was this consistency of what we do and the values we stand for, and they're all buying into the values, they all had a different take on why someone should buy the product. And that was really good, because that take is formed on life experience and what has resonated with them, and it's resonated with them on life experience. So to be able to say, get the attention in the attention paragraph, which is a different symptoms situation paragraph for every single person, and then say, and this is exactly how we solve it. At our company, we do such and such. And in my job role, I work with and I do such and such and such and such. What I love most about this company, such and such, or I believe that such and such and such and such. So now you're really getting in behind the scenes for them as to why they love this company. But all of it is actually telling me more about the product features, but I'm hearing it directly from you. And then they can say, you know, after my 20 years in this industry, I've seen firsthand how this happens and this happens. And that's why I've joined the team here, because I want to see this happen. So now I see someone with purpose and with drive, but I also see somebody who has years of experience that I want to glean and listen to. So now I'm going to be much more receptive to this person who's been sent to see me. Like, I've called up, I said, I want help with such and such. I might like to buy from you. Joe Bloggs has just showed up in my office, and he's a blank page to me until he starts talking. But hopefully I've looked at his LinkedIn profile before, and I'm like, I'm really excited about this meeting. He's going to really help me move this forward. And I'm curious to ask about such and such. And he's got experience in my industry, and he does know what he's talking about. Whereas if you have someone sitting in front of you, and you can be quite reserved with your information until you warm up to them and go, actually, you're worth telling my private stuff, my fears and anxieties to, which is part of a sales conversation, because I know that you're going to value what I say, because you're going to help me get a solution. Not only can I trust you with it, but there's a purpose to be sharing it, because you're going to move the needle and move me forward. So the profile for a team and the team members, and turning them into thought leaders, especially if they're sharing content, it's really bringing out the essence of who they are. And why they've come to this job. Why have you hired them? And what is it that you saw in them that you knew would be an asset to the company? And letting your customers know by putting it on the profile, and having that acceleration in the conversation, that I don't see you as just some corporate person in a job trying to sell me £1 million deal for such and such. But actually, I see you as someone who can really add value to this company and really help me solve problems and move forward.
So powerful. And I think for me, the way you're describing this, and I've got a slightly different take on LinkedIn, I think, now after this conversation. So thank you for this. I mean, I've been in and operating around kind of LinkedIn for, well, feels like decades now, but this is a fresh new take on it. So there's an interesting thing that's kind of, coming front of mind with me, and I'd be very, very keen to hear your take on it, is I'd be very keen in my monthly reviews, and I guess if this was a team talking here, maybe for monthly team meetings, to bring LinkedIn along to the meeting, having it as an agenda item, is like, how's it going this month? How did LinkedIn do for us this month? And kind of almost bringing it to the table, because it feels like anybody in business, anybody in marketing, any business owner, CEO, anyone in a business development role kind of almost needs to feel this is part of the team. It's over and beyond a marketing channel by the way you're describing it, Naomi. It's actually becoming something that is actually a team member. We've given it a job description. We've fueled it up with all this passion and this thought leadership content. Let's bring it to our team meetings. I mean, would that work?
Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting as well, because sometimes CEOs, it's going back to what I was saying before, whether you want a third person or a first person. And some CEOs, their doors are shut, but I've worked with some that are actually like, I've got an open door policy. I see what's on the agenda in the company, and I go, that's an interesting meeting. I'm going to show up and support my team. And he brings a lot to the table. And it's like, it was so interesting, because to be able to put his values on his profile and how he sees things, when he shows up in the meeting, people can get excited. The employees get excited that he's come to join in, not intimidated, not micromanaged, but like, oh, wow, he's going to add something extra here that I'm going to be wowed by. And the company is like, oh, we got the CEO with us today. Oh, we must be important, and it's doing it, because that could be interpreted in many ways, right? If he comes along, it's like, why are you here? Are you trying to take the deal? Do you not trust us with this big new client? But when you actually, what's written on the profile is your heart and your intention. And it creates that kind of, he's approachable. I want to get to know him. There was not a CEO, but someone on the board of a major supermarket in this country that I wrote the profile for a long time ago. I hate to tell you this, but she actually took it down because somebody at a big business school who has no idea about LinkedIn whatsoever told her it should be a CV, so she took it down. Like, why are we listening to people who aren't experts? But she was a single mother, and she'd come in on the shop floor, and over 25 years she'd worked herself up to board level, and she had all these initiatives for mums who were working in retail, check out, that kind of person. And she's such all these initiatives that they needed to know about. They weren't necessarily on LinkedIn as employees, but putting her heart on there, and it's not saying these are my values, it's demonstrating your values. Like, I have this initiative and it's designed to do such and such, not I care about the single mother and I want work-life balance and da-da-da. So no, tell me how you did it. And so it was such an incredible profile for like just highlighting key things that were important for the board to see, to respect her, but also for the employees to see and respect her. And you're talking to two different audiences. The lower level checkout people, no, they're not necessarily going to read that on LinkedIn. But the middle people who are on LinkedIn, maybe different job roles, they have a need for it. And so all of this is creating that rapport and how they see her, how receptive they are to her, how they feel about her, how they feel about working for the company. This is your corporate message, And if you can relate in a human way, and again, it's based on what your brand and your role needs, you've got to balance that out. But it can go so far for building that rapport and leading with purpose that it can change a company.
Wow, what is not to like about that? Because this is just so positive, it's so measurable, it's so tangible commercially as well, isn't it? I want to send people in your direction, Naomi. I want people to go towards what I think is a scorecard. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes. So one of the key things to say is like, I've talked about a lot there, and I've talked about, the top-down elements of it. To make decisions about what goes into each part of those things, you actually have to have the foundations of your business sorted already. And a lot of small businesses, people who sell their expertise, will think they've got it in place. But actually, if you compare it to a company, like a big telephone company, for example, they really do have it in place. And I just sell it, right? But we actually, quite often in service space, we don't have it in place. We haven't made some of the foundation decisions that allow us to speak with such clarity, and to lead with our purpose and to bring our credibility and authority on a subject into it. So the scorecard is designed to help you to see what you have already in place in your business and what you don't have in place, and how close you are to getting to the point where you could actually have your ideal client come to you pre-sold and ready to buy, which is everything that we've already been talking about. They know you, they like you, and they trust you, and they're excited to have that conversation with you. That they'll book in for a free half-an-hour conversation with you, and they will either show up on time and have it, or they will tell you, I can't come, can we please reschedule, and have that respect, rather than the opposite, which is no-shows. Which, if you're getting lots of no-shows, you're definitely not managing this. So the scorecard is 18 questions, and it will go through whether you've got quite a few of these elements in your business or not, and it will give you a score on how well you're performing in those areas. And on the other side, it'll give you some dynamic content based on how you've answered that will give you some pointers and guidelines of what to go and fix. And what I've also done inside of that, I've also put reference points. Like if you want to know more about this, go and read this page of my book that I've written, which is called Magnetize Your Expertise on LinkedIn. So you can come take the scorecard, see how you're doing, and then get a free copy of the book, a digital copy on there as well. So what you need to do to get hold of that is to come to the profile.company, and on there you'll see the scorecard. And the profile.company is all about LinkedIn. There's a template on there you can get as well for your profile that you can download and fill in and use if you want to write your own profile. And if you do want to go a little bit further, on the Magnetize Your Expertise side, I do have magnetizeyourexpertise.com as well. And that's where you'll be able to take the scorecard as well and the book, but also that's where I've got my new podcast launching as well, where we'll be discussing a lot of these things too. So the profile.company is really the place to go for the resources. Take the scorecard, get the book, and then if you want to talk to me, I do offer LinkedIn profile and strategy reviews. So you can also have the option at the end of the scorecard to book in for a 45-minute conversation with me, where I will look at your profile, learn about your business, and give you really top pointers on how to fix it.
Naomi, if that is not practical, I don't know what is. This is probably one of the most practical conversations I've had on the podcast since we began, and this is a long, long time ago.
Oh, wow.
So
that's a compliment.
it's just really good. Yeah, it's so good. And I think the lovely thing about this is that it's very, very clear for people to follow. And I think all of us are going to be now pressing rewind and going back and sort of recapping and making notes and almost playing along with Naomi in terms of looking at our own profile as you talk. And that would certainly be something I'd be recommending everybody does. So Naomi-Rose, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. It's been an absolute pleasure on my side.
Oh, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.